Geraldo Rivera.
I love you.
And here he is again.
I love you all. So nice to be back.
You.
Yeah, good to see you. Great
Year.
job on the 5-all week.
Well, thank you, Brian.
And I watched you battling last night with Sebastian Gorka.
Right.
Right. But I think the first things first is this Bannon book that drops in about an hour officially. A lot of people got ahead of it ahead of time. Overall, before we dive into it, I think the greatest damage to the president is these so-called people on the inside that think he's got mental issues, that not fit for the job.
That infuriates me, Brian, because I have known this man for 40 years. And I heard a commentator on MSNBC yesterday say, as a scientific medical fact, that there is no doubt but that the president emotionally and intellectually has deteriorated from his days as Celebrity Apprentice. So not only have I known him for 4 decades, I was on the last episode of Celebrity Apprentice with him every single day and spent an hour with him, as you'll recall, coming back from Puerto Rico on Air Force One and having just a one-to-one conversation. It is a slander. It is low down and dirty. It is absolutely false. This man is as lucid and as intelligent and as intellectually in charge of himself as he has ever been.
Does he read?
I don't sit in a lending library when I'm with the President of the United States. I'm not going to give you any information that I haven't seen with my own eyes. All I can tell you is he is extremely aware of everything that's going on.
Sure.
I think that his problem is he's aware acutely of too many things. He has so many things on his plate. I think that the challenge of the job is more than he ever expected it to be. But if you look at the learning curve of this man in the first year of his office, and look now how his business acumen and his ability to cheerlead and to encourage and to be the charismatic central focus has taken the American economy from a kind of lackluster, mediocre, kind of wishy-washy. President Obama did a fine job in helping recover from the catastrophic crash of 2008. But Donald Trump has jump-started the economy in a way that is so impressive that everybody is cheering. There's not a person watching right now who owns a single share of stock who isn't better off today than they were the day before President Trump took office.
This narrative of him not being smart, of not reading, he went to Wharton, he is a billionaire. You don't become a billionaire being stupid. You become president of the United States. I mean, he's clearly doing something right. He's just not a politician. So he comes in and he might talk to a reporter here and there, maybe thinking it's off the record or maybe thinking he can trust people. Past presidents have been in politics for a long time. He's learning as he goes in many ways. Why would Steve Bannon do this, though? The loyalty factor. I mean, he left the White. Is it because he was mad because he got fired?
I back up on first Trump and Bannon before Bannon. I think that the president's inexperience may have been one of the reasons he allowed Steve Bannon to become so intimately connected to him ideologically and politically and philosophically in that golden period where Bannon, a Navy veteran, he has a certain swagger to him. He has a kind of a simplistic view of the world where he's very good on messaging.
From Wall Street movie background.
Why did the president so embrace him in such an intimate way, only to reject him after a relatively short time? Bannon wasn't there all that long. Right. So I think that was perhaps an error in judgment to make Bannon such an intimate, because Bannon then is the one who opens up. If you look at the Wolf book, it's really a Bannon book. I mean, Bannon's the one that lets Wolf slouch on the couch. He's the one that allows him to become the fly on the wall.
He picked up the phone and told people to cooperate with Michael Wolff.
And that I think is unfortunate, because I think Bannon and Wolff had a deal that it was going to be a Bannon book, not a Trump book, right from the get-go.
Well, I tell you what, Geraldo, we had Sarah Huckabee Sanders on with us about 40 minutes ago, and here's what she had to say about Steve Bannon and his relationship with reporters.
He spent a lot of time with reporters. I think he spent a lot more time with reporters than he ever did with the president. And I think that's very telling. One of the most important things that you can do when you're working in any capacity, but especially in politics, is to be loyal. And I think we've seen a side that is frankly very, very disappointing and something that I hope we don't have to deal with again.
You know, one of the things about this particular book that came out and the disloyalty, the betrayal that Steve Bannon showed, was so many people said, well, Donald Trump's brain was Steve Bannon. You've known Donald Trump decades before Steve Bannon came along, he was never his brain.
Donald Trump's brain is Donald Trump's brain. It's not Karl Rove and George W. Bush at all. It's not that kind of situation. But I want to say something very specifically about Steve Bannon. Steve Bannon suggests that the meeting that Don Jr. and the others had with the Russians in Trump Tower the summer of 2016 was a treasonous act. I submit that what Bannon did in saying that Don Jr. took those commies upstairs to meet his father, you could take that to the bank, you can bet on it. What Bannon did in suggesting that the president did meet with those Russians in Trump Tower was indeed, and very specifically, an act of treason. Bannon stabbed President Trump in the back by making that suggestion. There is no investigative reporter, whether for the Washington Post, the New York Times, you name the Trump-hating news organization, no one
He wasn't in the building.
has in any way suggested that President Trump had anything to do with the Russians, that Don Jr., in his naivete and in his inexperience, convened the meeting with in Trump Tower.
I'll add a couple of things to that. He was not in the building at the time, number one. And number two is Steve Bannon was not hired at the time. And it's all conjecture on his part, which you would expect from, I don't know, David Cohen or someone on the left who has an assumption about the president that's predominantly negative. But this is what I ask you. What's the motivation? Is it pure ego? He's not a dumb guy. Wall Street, movies, multimillionaire,
Harvard,
military background, Ivy League grad, not dumb. So what is he up to?
I've seen it in show business with agents, Brian, where the agent is helping shepherd the career of a central person, and I got you in the movies, and now you're here, and the agent seems to take on the personality of the principal. The agent feels himself or herself the center of the universe. I truly believe that Steve Bannon saw himself as the Machiavellian character. He was the puppet master. He was going to really be the Trump presidency. It wasn't going to be about Donald Trump, the self-made billionaire. It was going to be about Steve Bannon, the scrappy outsider, the guy who took over the Breitbart website and now is going to make a brave new world. I think that it was all about ego. And I don't think there's corruption. I don't think that Bannon is getting a piece of Michael Wolff's book or anything like that. I think this was purely ego-driven, and it was just like a barroom braggart.
Right.
Once you go down that road, you've got to you got to top that. You got to top that brag. You got to. Oh, and if you like that one, how about this one? And I really think that this was much more a function of Bannon's ego than almost anything else. What I lament is that in attempting to criticize and attack this book, the president has inadvertently helped propel it to the top of the bestseller list.
Absolutely. Geraldo, something to get you going this morning, as if you're not already going, is the president is meeting with lawmakers on Capitol Hill to figure out how we get a new budget deal to run the government for maybe 2 years. But at the same time, the Democrats are saying, okay, if you're going to get your money, we're going to get DACA. And the president's saying, and I'm going to get a wall.
The thing about DACA has to stand on its own. DACA is the right thing for the American people to do, in Geraldo Rivera's opinion. You have this totally...
You sound like the Republicans, because they say there's no urgency in doing it right now.
There's an urgency in the fact that it is being phased out. It's being eliminated. These kids will soon be liable or vulnerable to deportation. Right. I think that the Dreamer situation, if I were the president, and I urge him as his friend, this is an act of compassion. Do this as a standalone. In other words, don't link it to the wall. Don't link it to the end, to the immigration lottery. But some things, Steve, if you had a little baby in distress, would you say, I'm not going to help the baby in distress because I want you to tear down that? Some things are not negotiable. I think, in my view,
just put it all in.
This is a New York guy. He talks about his New York values. He grew up here. He knows these kids as well as anybody else. Let him give the DACA kids their slack, and then attack things like, all right, the chain migration. You can easily end chain migration.
But
how do you end chain?
Not with one party.
But Brian, the thing about leverage. Sometimes when you wield leverage, you look like the jerk. When you wield leverage and you say, if you want that, then you've got to do this.
No, but it's a deal.
When it's about humanity, some things are not dealable, is my point.
But so is humanity at the border. So is humanity stopping the drugs from coming in.
You know, I understand that. I hear that. But these are kids who are here through no fault of their own. They have been totally vetted. We know where they are. Many of them are in the military. They're in college.
Here's Lindsey Graham. What he said yesterday, I think, is very telling. While everyone's talking about the president's mental state, he has a different view. Watch.
Obama couldn't do it. Bush couldn't do it. I think you can do it. There's a deal to be had. If you want it bad enough, we'll get it. It'll be good for the country. Everybody's got to give a little bit.
That's what. This is the time to give. You want this, you get that. Lindsey Graham, he didn't even vote for President Trump. Says you could do what Bush and Clinton and Obama couldn't.
I will reserve comment on Senator Graham. I will say again that if think about the book, even the people that hate Trump are still going to hate Trump. The people that love Trump are still going to love Trump. This is a sliver of a chance right here with the Dreamers, where the president can show he can strip away a talking point for all of those fiery anti-Trumpian commentators on the other cable news networks. He could just take away one of their talking points, and then you deal with the. I really believe. Here, you want to negotiate? I'll negotiate. All right, let's end chain migration. Here's how you end it. You define the personal family, the core family, as grandparents. Parents and children, not cousins, not uncles, not aunties. I will negotiate that. You want to build the wall? Take the wall and replace it with the 700 miles you've already built that's fallen down.
See, you want something the president did not. The president ran on the wall. He's going to use this as leverage. Let's fast forward.
Because you know what would happen? He would give that gift to the Democrats, putting DACA alone. The Democrats aren't going to gift him anything
back.
He's
not dealing with
He's not going to get the wall. Without the leverage, he won't get the wall, Geraldo.
I think that sometimes you take a chance when the worst thing you can do is something compassionate and nice for people.
Let's see what happens. All right.